like to introduce Oleksiy Semenyaka, who will be presenting the resiliency of the Ukrainian segment of the Internet. Alex is an external relations officer at RIPE NCC and is from Ukraine. This is Alex's first time presenting at a NANOG. Thank you and welcome, Alex.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will present some results obtained by me and my colleague Emil Aben. You already have heard this name today. And I will present what we got about this situation in Ukraine. At the very beginning, as you know, Russia started bombing Ukraine on February 24th of 2022. And I remember it because I did not sleep, and I started hearing, first explosions at approximately 4:40. And, it was all over the country, more than 100 missiles, and the offensive operation all along the border. So the map, how it was during the first, I believe, 2 days. So all country was under the attack. And obviously we have a lot of destructions of the civilian objects, all civilian objects, including the infrastructure, including the internet infrastructure. By the way, here at the right bottom, you see the building where I used to live in Kharkiv before that. So obviously, internet disruption started, and the service net blocks measured it for different regions, different cities, for the whole Ukraine, and it showed, every day that there is a destruction here and there. And we in RIPE NCC also saw the decrease of the number of the RIPE Atlas probes connected, which obviously means that there were some problems. And according to Cloudflare, we saw how people started switching from fixed line services to mobile services, because in every point usually you have several cellular towers around, and if your fixed line connection is broken, most probably you will have some mobile service. And initially everybody expected that there would be a rapid destruction of whole Ukrainian infrastructure and panic among the civilians, including the engineers working for telecom operators, would even worsen this situation, and the consistent development of this process will lead to the complete loss of the connectivity in the country. And it didn't happen. It never happened. In reality, individual nodes restored really fast, and partial losses of connectivity thus were restored without the global impact. So all those decreases after some short period went up, and telecom operator continued to provide services. After that, as you know, Russia started bombing the power infrastructure, and it was really critical. The disruption of services became much more serious. And you can check these diagrams from NetBlock and from Yoda, and you see that the minimal level is about 20–30% of the normal one. So it was much more critical than the attacks to the internet infrastructure itself. And after the first power interruption, it became evident that the power is a bottleneck. If it's possible to restore the individual node of the telecom operator, it's not that easy to restore the power plant. So at some level, the 10% of the Ukrainian energy section was completely devastated, completely destroyed, and approximately 50% was damaged. That's according to our main power company in the country, DTEC. And it is in line with the data from Ukrainian government, which said that it's about 40% is out of service. And we can see this on the different diagrams. That's the diagrams from Yoda project under the control of Georgia Institute of Technology. And you can see that some indicators are really, really low, much below than the normal level, which is the line on the top. In November, December, and January, they were critical. The situation was really, really hard. However, the industry started providing services, and it recovered relatively quick. And if you check the infrastructural data, for example, the number of prefixes or number of autonomous systems announced in the full view, you will see the decrease, obviously, but this decrease is not that huge as the indicators from, say, Google. So the resiliency of the internal infrastructure found out to be much higher than expected again. So there were issues. Definitely there were issues, but these issues did not become a catastrophe. And also it's interesting to see that counter-offensive operations of the Ukrainian army led, every time it led to the improving of the results. So the normal operations after the counter-offensive Ukrainian operations restored, which is obviously a good sign. And another view we discussed 5 minutes ago, the number of RIPE Atlas probes. RIPE Atlas is one of the main tools we are using to measure anything in the internet in RIPE NCC. So that's the obvious source of the information. And you see this decrease of number of probes. However, it's necessary to understand that RIPE Atlas probe is not a critical service for the operator. When operator is restoring operation, restoring everything, restoring the infrastructure, probably RIPE Atlas probe will be the last thing it will restore in this story. So, and it's completely possible that engineer would completely forget about this probe, and it will not be just reinstalled while the normal operations were restored. So we have to understand that this diagram has some bias here. And another important tool we have is Routing Information Service, RIS. And my colleague Emil Aben, who is co-author of the presentation, he did in-house tool to visualize connections between different autonomous systems. And he did a visualization for Ukraine before the war and after the war, including changes which were made. On the left, you can see the situation before the war, and the pink nodes are foreign ones. The size of node indicates the importance. On the right, you see basically it's the difference, because you have not only nodes here, but also you have connections between them, and green ones which appeared during the war, and red one which disappeared. Well, and stable are gray. So you can evaluate the evolution of the system, and we will discuss it a little bit later. Also, it's interesting to check the UCLA data regarding the speed and delay to the UCLA services. And we see that the mobile industry obviously is really sensitive to these power outages, much more sensitive than the broadband services. So when we are speaking about the first days, the strikes to the internet infrastructure, mobile services won. But when we are speaking about the power outages, fixed broadband is more important. So that's interesting conclusion. And you see this evolutionary development of the indicators during the war. So the industry continues evolving, which is good. And also it's interesting to check the Cloudflare statistics and Google statistics, which is not that positive, you know. You see sufficient drop-offs, and the overall shape is a little bit, it's not in line with other data. But we have to understand that this data has a strong influence on the number of users. So the migration plays a huge role when we are doing this type of measurements. So here we have a summary of the migration of users and the evolution of the infrastructure. And the same we have for the Google data. So that's another important conclusion, that this data cannot be directly used to understand what's going on with the infrastructure, because they are too complex, and due to that, they have a sufficient bias. So a short analysis of what we are seeing. First of all, if we take a look on the market in Ukraine, you know, it's one of the least concentrated market in the world, number 4 in the world. I will mention it. It's not on the slide. Right now in Ukraine, we have around 2,500 operators. It's a huge number. And due to that, we have really low concentration, and we have no dominant player in the market amongst operators. And the result is a high fault tolerance. This is the map provided by the Curator Labs, anti-DDoS company based in Czech Republic. Each year they are evaluating the fault tolerance in terms of the whole autonomous system outage in the country. And they are summarizing the impact for each autonomous system, and thus they are calculating this rating. And Ukraine now is number 6. Several years ago it was number 4, and this is completely the result of this diversification. And another way to understand this diversification is this diagram presenting the interconnection. And it should be a full circle, but the tool does not show the operators which serve less than 1%. And you see how many these operators are. So the number of small operators are really, really huge, and that's why there are a lot of different possibilities. And similar situation we have with the internet exchange points. We have 19 listed in PRNDB, and actually we see 13 of them acting right now. Once again, we have a tool, country GDI XP, which measures trace route between each two Atlas probe inside the country, and then it checks what the path is, and if there is an IXP along this path, you have this green dot on the diagram. The most of paths have some IXP on the path, and there are 13 IXPs acting, and once again, no one dominant IXP. So basically, some conclusion that yes, we have we see some negative consequences. The number of connections is decreasing. More connection have been lost than gained, unfortunately. But the number of new connections are still really, really serious. It's a good number. So we can consider this probably as kind of optimization which was delayed, because as you saw, the UCLA shows that the end users parameters are increasing. And also we see this decrease in number of connecting RIPE Atlas probes, but once again, it might be the result of the situation when the operation is restored except with the RIPE Atlas probe. And the diagram of this decrease are not that bad as they were at the beginning. So the situation is getting better. And last but not least, the number of working IXPs is not decreasing. We have these 13 IXPs working for the country, and they are helping a lot. So due to the fact that we have a lot of players, the incidents we had did not turn into a catastrophe. Of course, it's not that easy to, to cope with all this stuff. And I will show you some pictures later. But still, because we have this huge amount of opportunities, we are surviving. That's one of the factors. Another important factor I have to mention is the human factor. When all this mess started, operators came out with a lot of initiatives. First of all, they started providing free internet access in the bomb shelters. Mobile operators decided to provide the national roaming, which means that if I have a SIM card from one operator, another operator will serve me for free, if necessary. And they shared the inventory, they shared teams, they worked right in the middle of the warfare. It was a real heroism which cannot be automated. And this is one of the most important factors of the resiliency of the internet in Ukraine. I promised you some pictures, and you see how people are working. That's real pictures from Ukraine. They sometimes they started working before the fire ended. And the same did people from power companies, which were restoring, power plants all the winter. And they worked without weekends, they worked without any life, so they had only work and some breaks between this work, sleeping pretty frequently right on the site. And also, there are a lot of discussions of the help from abroad, and I have to mention this because it was important. First of all, Starlink. There are a lot of discussions about Starlink in Ukraine, but we have to understand that Starlink is not a part of the normal internet infrastructure. It has exactly two roles to serve. First of all, it serves for military communication or communication for governmental agencies. It's completely special scenario, or it's used for recently deoccupied territories, because when Russia leaves the territory, it ruins everything, starting with all telecom infrastructure. So it's really important to bring there some devices, for example, Starlinks, to let people connect to relatives, to friends, and to say several words. And another really important initiative, which is important for internet infrastructure, is Keep Ukraine Connected. It was presented, I believe, last NANOG. It is an initiative of the Global NOG Alliance, and that's a platform to collect unnecessary equipment from operators around the world and provide this equipment to Ukrainian ISPs, which are affected by this war. And right now, the amount of aid already provided is I think that it's in more. It's 2.5 million euros right now, and you have this URL if necessary. These are these guys, and I would really thank them for this help, because it was really important for the industry to have this help. And to sum up, obviously, a war has an impact on the connectivity, on the work of the internet services, everything. But also, some factors can help to mitigate that. The diversity helps a lot. That's really, really important. And we are really lucky to have this. And however, we have to remember that internet doesn't work itself. It needs electricity, for example. And because of that, the power infrastructure is also really important. And it can be a bottleneck. It can be a bottleneck. And also a quick and really focused help is extremely important. Like Army got help from Starlink, and internet industry got help from the internet industry through Keep Ukraine Connected with the equipment, and energy companies get help from other governments who provided some power equipment, which was really, really important to have exactly this help, exactly at these points. And the key factor, as I said, is a human factor. And, that's a short overview. I did not cover a cyber war. There are a lot of aspects of cyber war these days, and that's important to understand that it's not a computer game. And we see a really, really high level of incidents both in Ukraine and in Russia. According to Cloudflare, the number of incidents increased by an order of magnitude, including something which never happened before, like hacking into the satellite system. That's something serious. And also we have the routing incidents, which probably should be discussed one day when we have enough information. And these routing incidents are closely connected to stories with the takeover of Ukrainian companies, which led to takeover of their resources, including IP prefixes and autonomous systems, which then were used somewhere in Russia. And that's completely another story, which is worthy to discuss separately. So that was my short overview of what's going on in my country. If you have any questions, please ask them now or during the break, and I'm here for the whole event, so don't hesitate to approach me.
Thank you very much. I love these types of talks. What I was hoping to hear was that there was a massive problem with the power in the Ukrainian ecosystem, but the backup generators delayed the ultimate downing of the network for 24 hours or however much power you had. Do you have any insight into the backup power systems across Ukraine?
So did I get right that it was not a question?
The question is, do you have any insight into the backup power systems? Were they effective?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, yeah. Unfortunately, all backups were used already in November, not later than December. And unfortunately, we have pretty old power infrastructure left from the Soviet time, so Russia has a lot of information of our infrastructure. Basically, in January there were not that many possibilities to use those backups. Some of them were left by that time. in those places where there were no strikes. But in other places they were already used. Our power companies, well, they invented some tricks, to cope with this situation, and they became doing some short-term backups to expecting some issues in this part. For example, if I understand that I have no backup here, I will try to provide some temporary solution for this spot, if necessary. And also they found a way to minimize the damage, actually. That's another story. I can describe it, you personally. So these efforts led to some improvement, but it was not, it was not sufficient. I really well remember this January. Basically, the solution for the internet industry were generators. All those backups, they tried to do something, and they did something, but it was not a real solution. A real solution were generators we got from everywhere, and all operators got extra generators, because generator cannot work for 24 hours usually, so you have to have several of them, and this process helped us. Okay, thank you very much. Once again, don't hesitate to approach me.